Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today, where we are here to talk about how the pandemic stress is causing burnout and how we need to relearn ways to cope. We have with us today Bhagwagar, who is a clinical psychologist as well as a trauma therapist. We won't take too much time, but I'll just quickly, in a sentence, describe PatientsEngage. We are an online platform which believes in the power of lived experiences, and we believe that people who are informed and engaged about their own health are better empowered to lead better quality of lives. And so we believe in ensuring that people get as much information as possible about how to cope with things. Quick guidance to people who are either on Zoom or on our Facebook page. Uh, this is not to be treated as medical advice. If you have specific medical issues, please do consult your doctor. This is based largely on the experience of panelists. This session is being recorded. So if you're logged into Zoom, you can post your questions on the Q&A tab that you see at the bottom. And if you're on Facebook, you can post your comments, questions on the live feed. As always, you can follow us on any of our social pages or the website patientsengage.com. We are on Facebook, Twitter. The webinars we do get recorded and put onto YouTube as well. And you can also find us on Instagram. If you have anything that you would like to share, you can always write to us at editor@patientsengage.com or in our forums on PatientsEngage as well. So let's get going quickly. I guess the question is that, we try to look at it from different perspectives of different personas. A woman who's working from home, trying to keep online classes of her children going, as well as finding ways to keep the child entertained so the child does not distract from the work calls of her husband or herself. A person sitting in front of a screen for sometimes 12 hours, jumping from one call to the other. No human contact with work colleagues, no corridor chat, no eye contact, no banter, none of that, right? Are you a youth who's worried about how the year will pan out? Will it be a 0 year? Are you missing hanging out with your friends? Are you a parent now with Unlock 4, being forced to go back to work while the children are at home studying online? And maybe you also have an elderly parent who needs care and you're worried how that will happen. Will the risk of your uh, leaving them alone or bringing in additional help, is the risk worth it? And in all of that, with the economic crisis, you're afraid of losing your job, you're wondering how your finances are going to last. And I think when we looked at the data that's coming out more and more, the fact of the matter is that you're not alone. Uh, there's a lot of people who are reporting burnout. Monster, which is an employment platform, reported that 69% of employees are reporting burnout already. And we'll talk to Havovi in just a minute about, what is burnout, how do you classify it, and so on. And people are not taking time off. We do have to recognize that we are now into almost 6 months of this pandemic. We've not taken our summer vacation. We've not taken time off. The festive season kind of came and will continue, but there's been hardly any time off, hardly any celebrations. And we are hearing, even on our site, we see increasing comments and people are talking about sleep challenges, talking about anxiety, panic attacks at various stages. Aches and pains have gone up. Some of it is just because of the postures, etc., but some of it is also possibly stress related. Young people are talking about inability to concentrate, and so on. The list goes on. So I think by now you've kind of got a sense of where you fit into this, but let's kind of stop the slide share and get into a discussion with Havovi. So Havovi, in your practice as well, are you seeing similar signs? Are you, are you hearing your clients and people talking about similar things? And what do these signs indicate?
So hi, Aparna, first of all, and to all our viewers. So thanks for having me on this platform. I remember that we had our first discussion at the beginning of the
Of
pandemic.
COVID, correct.
And now, 6 months later, who would have thought, we'd still be like actually doing be in the same place? I hadn't imagined it. I don't think any of us had when we did that talk.
Right.
So, if you ask me, are my clients going through it? I would say that I'm seeing an unprecedented surge in mental health crisis. Things which I had just been talking about, I feel I'm living it now because it feels like, people's past traumas have resurfaced. But apart from that, they're actually feeling the stress of being at home now in the last couple of months
Mm,
more than it was in the early part of the lockdown. So right now, I am, people whose healthy coping strategies seem to have kind of stabilized. The ones I was seeing in therapy seem to have just upended again.
mm,
And many of them I hear in every session telling me the same thing. We feel like we're going back. We are going
mm,
back. We've walked a journey and now we are going back. So it's a sense of helplessness even for me as a therapist. And I in fact look to see, am I going to hear something positive from anyone today when
mm.
I, start my work with my clients? That's not something which I used to look for. I would take it for granted before. But now I actually think that will there be even one single story I hear in the day that has something positive associated with it? So it's looking to me quite dramatic and much bigger than what I had anticipated it to be.
Right. And I think one of the issues that we are seeing is that, and these are of course for you people who've had long-standing mental health issues, but even otherwise the people had coping skills, right? They went out for a coffee, they went out for a movie with
Yeah.
friends, they took time off, they even stepped out to catch lunch with a friend or even a work colleague, right? There, as I keep saying, there was that banter which happens when you meet somebody face to face, which is impossible in a Zoom session. I mean, unless you really have to, actively plan for it. Um, so, what we are seeing also is all of the self-care plans completely thrown out of the window, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, a lot of people have been telling me, are we working from home or are we living at work?
Hmm.
We don't know how to differentiate.
Right.
Where is that demarcation? What makes it happen for us? And you're quite right, whether it is with pre-existing mental health issues or people who've never had a mental health issue in their life,
Hmm.
but are finding that the energy resources are depleting. And as time is going by, there is a lot of hope depleting as well. And that's dangerous because really hope keeps us alive.
Right.
It gives us motivation to do things every day.
Right.
So, I think it's very important that our previously learned strategies, what we did know worked for us, may not be completely viable in today's day and age.
Hmm.
And it'll all depend upon our creativity, the resources we build from inside, and we look at some of the research coming forward that can guide us as to what do we learn new, how do we do things differently than we used to do before. uh, we all at some point of time needed a break,
Right.
right? And that break used to be built into our daily schedules also to a large extent, because Fridays and then there would be a break of the weekend.
Right.
There's also a break because you leave work and you go to you leave home and you go to work in the morning, and you do the opposite when you come back home. There are breaks, there are with temporal breaks, there are breaks of time. There's none of that. It's
Hmm.
just like, no borders, no boundaries, nothing. One day flows into the next. So
Right.
and people are not realizing that's what's happening. They're under the assumption that if this is the way life is, this is the way life is. But at the back of their head, the way their brain is not able to stand this new type of coping, that has to be brought to their notice. Otherwise, like it's happening with a lot of people, they just crash for no reason
Right.
because they haven't given credence to the fact that they have been under so much of stress and strain.
Right. And I guess, yeah, I think that the overwhelming feeling at the moment, as you said, is that there is no end in sight, right? And there is a
Correct.
strong feeling of being trapped. There is, I mean, we are constantly hearing people say, I can't take it anymore. And it could be
Correct.
anything, right? It could be the challenges of caregiving, it could be balancing work and, home. The home, kind of chores and domestic work. Um, so let's kind of look at, first of all, if you could explain to people what is burnout? Because I think we use the term periodically, but people kind of don't understand that enough. So if you could just explain that so that people understand, when is kind of stress normal and then when does it become, burnout?
Burnout. So we know that the WHO and the ICD, the International Classification of Diseases, classified burnout as a problem. It's
Mm,
not really a medical condition, but it arises from chronic workplace stress. And the person typically will feel an energy depletion, exhaustion, what they call as a distancing from their job. They don't feel as connected to their work or to other people. They feel a sense of detachment. They
mm,
feel negative or cynical about a lot of things around them, which they never used to feel earlier. And they're getting the feedback from others that their efficiency is not as good as it used to be. So
right.
in a workplace scenario, this is what a person would be termed as having burnout. In and because of that, because employees are realizing this, you must have heard yesterday that Google gave their full-time employees an entire day off, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
that's because there's some employers are believing and understanding that now burnout is not what they'll see in maybe 5 or 10% of their employees. They're probably
right.
going to see it in a huge, massive portion of their employees. But let's look at burnout as a more umbrella term for
Mm,
people, in general. See, our bodies and our mind is kind of tuned to adapt to stress.
right.
When we have stress, it's pretty growth inducing. We develop our inner resources. We learn how to cope with it. And we all went into this lockdown thinking of it to be stress.
Right.
But when stress gives way to strain, that's really when it starts moving into burnout territory.
Mm,
So it's when the amount of demands on us starts exceeding our capabilities.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Our capabilities are meant for a particular world that we have grown up in.
Right.
We have adapted our ways of functioning for managing certain types of daily life, and we've
Mm,
adapted ourselves to that across so many years.
correct.
Suddenly when those capabilities don't have any use, then what do we do with that? We have
Right.
so many demands coming in, we don't have enough capabilities to manage it. It's a complete imbalance.
Mm,
Typically when it's stress, then somewhere we kind of balance it out. When it becomes burnout is when we can't balance it out. The strain is getting too much on us. It is unsustainable. Our energy and our motivation and our resilience are being tested big time.
right.
And it's with the lockdown, it's like a relentless pace, right? People are juggling multiple roles in one space,
Correct.
just
Correct.
literally like one space. So there is no strain. There is so much strain. There is uncertainty. You're taking off one hat and putting off the other without any break between those,
Mm,
right?
true.
Our brains are in a lot of ways integrated. We know that we have a work persona, we have a home persona, but they are different sides of us which we would like to put together as our sense of self. But
Right.
what happens when there is no demarcation?
True.
That is when it starts moving into that territory where you have burnout, and then you experience irritability, a strong need to perhaps rely on carbohydrates,
Mm,
an unhealthy amount of carbohydrates. Your sleep goes for a toss. You don't feel like exercising. You
right.
don't even feel like doing the things you used to feel like doing earlier. Maybe in
True.
the early part of lockdown, you did a lot of calls and video calls and talk to people. You don't feel like doing any of that.
Correct.
That's when it's moving into burnout territory. It basically means the person is exhausted.
Mm.
is it you'll be able to see burnout usually by looking at the person. They look depleted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And I think that's where a lot of us are heading from, say, end of June onwards.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I guess end of June is also pretty much around the time when we realized that this is going to be a long haul. You know,
Exactly.
there are no uh,
There's no,
kind of
there's
it's
only
not a it's
unlock, lock, lock, unlock, but it's all the same.
correct, correct. So in fact, I remember even in terms of our own content, we found that that was the time where we suddenly saw a spike in content being read around panic attacks, around insomnia, etc.
It's
Let's look at the
interesting.
different
Yeah.
profiles of people, right? So let's start with uh, I guess first of all, the family as a whole.
Mm.
What do you think the family as a whole can do to, uh, you know, what are some of the signs that you're seeing? And then again, what can they do to manage the situation or to learn to cope?
So, like I said, I saw a big difference between the early part of the lockdown and then
Mm,
June onwards, because I think a lot of people saw that summer break as a
right,
break with their family in the house.
correct.
Many people weren't grumbling so much around that time,
Mm,
April, May, June, early June. But then, as would happen to most humans, they started getting on each other's nerves, which will
right,
happen to anyone, right?
right.
You know the basic inconsistencies, the kind of things that you could overlook when you had a little break from each other. A
Mm,
lot of things start coming to the surface, and then I think in metro cities people choose a mode of stress management called avoidance.
mm,
They try to move into other things and do other stuff and really avoid working on the larger issues.
right.
And you'll see in a lot of small towns this doesn't happen, but
Mm,
in larger metros where there is a chance for so many other things to distract you, you
right.
really bury all emotional stuff literally under the carpet, whether it's with your own self or with the people closest to you.
Right.
And it all starts emerging. And in a time like this, it's literally bubbling and coming to the surface. So we heard about in the early part of the lockdown about domestic violence. We heard about alcoholism increasing.
Mm,
But in the later part of the lockdown, there are more subtle things happening. And we
mm,
also heard about a lot of divorces.
right.
People looking for actually breakups in their marriages in the early part of the lockdown. But now it's more subtle.
Mm,
Relationship problems, people going into fights and arguments in the house. Family conflicts are increasing.
right.
Uh, Problems with children are really coming to the surface because they have been naturally kept cooped up for the last 5 or 6 months.
Mm,
Problems between couples, problems with in-laws, and they all have been emerging over and over and over again.
right.
And there doesn't seem to be that much relief.
Mm,
You can't really engage in avoidance anymore. You have
right.
to engage in problem solving. So, like I said, that's why a family will need to relearn the way in which they are probably have been engaging with each other in the urban metros. It may require a lot more sitting down with each other and talking, actual communication,
Mm,
not communication over the social medium and over text as used to
right.
happen.
Right.
Really face-to-face communication. So relearning all of that, I think, is what's going to be very necessary right now. If you're living in close quarters and you want to live without really killing each other,
Right.
so to
Right.
speak.
Yeah, it's like we are in a dystopian film, right, setting, right? So,
Oh, that's the second time I've heard that word. It's really one of those dystopian film settings. But I said this earlier also in another talk that I think it's up to us to decide whether we want to make it dystopian.
mm,
Yeah, it can very quickly turn into one of those films we see where people are kind of just jostling each other and running for that last piece of bread.
right,
But I hope we have enough common sense to be more balanced than that.
right, right. So,
Yeah.
should we, and again, to the audience that's listening, please do write in or, send in your questions if you have any or any comments that you would have. Um, One of the segments where we are hearing a lot of, okay, three other segments. Let me break it down into maybe four. One is women who are, kind of caregivers at home, plus also trying to balance work. Some of them have been forced to, uh, give up work as well, especially if they were working from home, etc. Um, what is and then you have the men who are struggling because they're thinking their jobs may, some of them have lost jobs, some of them are thinking that if it hasn't happened in this round it will happen in the next round, so they're worried. And I guess that anxiety also adds to the stress at home. um, there are kids who are struggling with having to learn to do all classes online, and missing going out and playing with friends, and all of that. And I guess then there's the elderly, right, who are being constantly told that they are at risk and not allowed to do a lot of stuff, and some of them are also feeling that their own ability to take decisions is being taken away as well. um, so do you look at each of these categories, and I'm sure there are more, but you know, are the are the ways forward the same for all of them, or do we need to look at different approaches for each one of them?
More or less, because they're humans, the same strategies apply. But of course, each category has different set of problems as compared to the other. So the strategies will have to, whatever they used to learn earlier, if they have used up those resources, they'll have to employ new ones now.
Mm,
With women, of course, it's concerning,
mm,
not because there's any gender bias there, but typically in cultures like ours, anyway, women spend a lot more hours than men on childcare.
right.
Some studies say it could be 7 hours more per week, but in Indian homes, I think it is much more than that. And they also spend a lot more time on a lot less time in sleep.
Mm,
In fact, there have been studies done prior to the lockdown where it has been found that women sleep on an average at least 3 hours lesser than other members of their household, which
wow.
anyway was a recipe for burnout.
Right.
So
Right.
most women wouldn't be able to sleep before 11 or 12 because
Mm,
for the men in the house, the kids in the house, after dinner, it just meant go to bed or
right.
maybe. But for a woman, it's a lot more chores that they would have to take care of. And then, in some ways, the house help
Mm,
helped to reduce that strain to a large extent, with the house
right.
help not being available. Although now in August and now in September, house help has returned to some extent, but not as much. A lot of
Right.
people have chosen not to
Not to.
take their
Correct.
house help back. So even now, the load of the house definitely is a lot more on women.
Mm,
And that's why in the early half of the lockdown, they called the pandemic as a kind of an equalizer. Because
right.
whatever inconsistencies and dominance or whatever imbalance was in the household became so apparent with the lack of the domestic help.
Right.
So I can say that in some ways, men have started contributing a lot more than earlier, started taking agency, accountability, so that has worked, but I won't say it's worked in all the sectors.
Mm,
Even in urban metros, we are still seeing that women are expected to bring, the food to the table and serve
right.
men in the family. And not that the men don't want to, but the
Mm,
social, the entire conditioning is such that they don't go and help because it will make them lesser men.
right.
So this is very, very real, and it's there. It's one of the reasons why we are seeing that women are at a very high risk for mental health issues
Mm,
as compared to men. So they need to have good care for themselves and need to start setting boundaries.
right.
That is much easier said than done, especially in joint families, and where the stress is very, it's very inbuilt, very cultural. So, but for women who have some choices that they can engage in, they need to take those choices.
Right.
Sometimes women place the burden right on themselves. They want to be superwomen.
Correct.
Don't understand that that's actually the quickest way to burn out. You can't be perfect in every sphere of your life or do
Mm,
a great job in every sphere of your life. So that's my one. message to women that please, you don't need to eat organic food with every meal. You don't need to clean your house every single day, every corner of the house.
Right.
You need to be able to ask for support.
Correct.
You need to be able to take this opportunity to start breaking those gender biases.
Mm.
And otherwise, see, if the woman of the house is not in a good place, in Indian families, they consider her the foundation.
Mm.
Put somebody in a really a city that's not receiving so much of input or data from around the world.
Correct.
All
Correct.
they have information about is from their own households around them
Right.
and the TV that they see.
Right.
These
Which
people are not,
reinforces.
which reinforces these same things again and again.
Right.
So it's up to them to decide that they need to change that gender bias around, and they will otherwise break under that strain.
Mm.
And trust me, I've been seeing a lot of this as we go around.
Right. Right.
However, that said and done, it's not like everything is women centric. The lockdown is not a burnout, kind of a study only on women. It's also on guys.
Absolutely.
Men have it
Absolutely.
equally difficult. There have been men who have spoken to me and said they are so keen to help their wives out, but they find that they can't because they become a laughing stock.
Mm.
You see, they are bullied even when they're taking work calls and they ask for a little extra time, maybe to do something to help, their wife out. And I'm talking not just of tier three, tier two cities, but even urban metros. So they face shame, they face helplessness.
Mm.
And it's not just a woman's job, but a man's job also now to kind of break those boundaries and start redefining the way they are or realigning the way they look at work, home roles and
Right.
home chores,
Right.
and developing a little assertiveness in themselves to recognize that their earning potential or their employability has nothing to do with their
House
housework,
chores.
yeah, house
Right.
chores. So I think that's very important for men also to define those boundaries around. And men find it very comfortable to manage childcare
Mm.
because they then look good. And
Right.
a lot of bosses and managers give them appreciation for it.
Right.
But it's quite amazing, isn't it? They're not given that same appreciation if they were shelling peas
Mm.
or if they were doing jhadu. It's, I guess those gender roles are so fixated in their
Right.
mind. So we need, I think the lockdown, and the fact that it's so endless is actually giving this opportunity for people to start evening that, that way of looking at gender roles out.
Right. Right. Okay. And
Um,
anything on the children and youth that you would like
Children,
to?
youth, and children, in fact, recent studies have been saying are now going in for quite a lot of burnout
Hmm.
in the last couple of months. Of course, these are not India studies, these are studies from abroad, but they have been saying that the kids are hugely depleting their resources.
Right.
For a lot of children, resources come from other children and from engaging with other kids,
Hmm.
from outdoors. Many people think that children are engaged only with the screens, but that's not always the case. Kids
Right.
need to be outside, need to be around their friends.
Correct.
They need to have buddies. They need to backslap. They are not the best at maintaining physical distancing.
Hmm.
How much ever you drill it into their heads, they're not. So, which is why parents are so scared to send their kids out, because if they go out, they're definitely going to engage in some physical contact. So the kids are very burnt out. And contrary to what we think that the youth and children of today are, going to be so comfortable around screens, they are also very strained.
Hmm.
The kids are not adapting as well to screens as we would have thought that this generation would, because
Right.
it's unnatural to be on the screen all the time.
All the time.
And they do require breaks. They do need their classrooms. They do need to kind of be with other children, tease them, get teased in return,
Hmm.
share their tiffin with somebody else, go to a teacher and take suggestions from her. They
Correct.
need that, and without that social contact, children are typically going to get burnt out very badly.
Right. And they're also lost out on play, right? Um,
They've lost out on gardens and parks and beaches,
mm,
and of course the family time that they had with their parents, engaging in some activity outside the house which
right.
didn't involve home chores.
Right.
That gave children also to see their parents in a relaxed way, to
Mm.
be around them and engage with them in a different way. All that is gone. So for kids, actually, I would say the challenge is the biggest. How
Right.
to keep them engaged, how to make sure that they are motivated enough. So with kids, I think it's more a public health kind of an issue. We need to look at it from all angles. The
Right.
education system starts needing to make changes so that they engage their children without on screen also with activities.
Right. Right.
And parents need to start building in some activities into the child's life that doesn't involve just taking class after class after class,
Mm.
which involves something which is practical, something which is exercise oriented. So I think for children, the government is going to have to start making some interventions and inroads about the way it's looking at the schooling system.
Right. Right.
That's going to have to change. For the elderly, I think the elderly are a hugely, I would say, underrated population.
Mm.
There's not much that we are really doing for them or thinking about them. But these are the people who really are the most pressured
Right.
because see they are the ones who would get infected the fastest.
Right.
So the anxiety in the home is all centered around them,
Correct.
and all the guilt finally comes back to them. You know,
Mm.
if things are not ordered from outside, it's because of them. If people are
Right.
not allowed to go out, it's because of them. So you know, everybody then brings it back to, oh, we have old parents at home, so we don't want to do this.
Mm. Mm.
And you know, when I was doing a workshop with a group of them, they were saying, "How do we live with this guilt?
Mm.
First is we are so frustrated, we can't leave
Right.
the house. So, and then you know, we have everybody at home making it sound like they're doing anything and everything because of us."
Right.
So, but the elderly, I think, are also resilient and wise.
Mm.
They find ways around them. They have built their communities. There are some who have learned how to play cards online. I've heard of
Right.
some of them who take their drinks on, you know, with their friends over Zoom calls.
Mm.
I've heard of them organizing trips for people in another country virtually,
Right.
yeah, into museums or into various other um, things. So the elderly have found some ways, but that's age and wisdom speaking, also time, because many
Right.
of them are in a lot of ways retired.
Right.
But we are looking at the population that's below 60, really in below 50,
Mm.
yeah, really in the danger zone, the red zone, so to speak. And for the elderly, it's a lot about the emotions and their family helping them through those emotions.
Right. Right. So let's kind of start looking at, we've kind of established that uh, every segment seems to be impacted, different levels, but quite a lot. Um, so what are some of the steps that people need to start looking at, and what can they, you know, what are the baby steps they need to take, or what are the few, if they had to kind of take away from this talk that we have, a few takeaways, what would those be?
So just circling back to what I was saying, which is about understanding that the burnout we are going through right now is all strain,
Mm.
stress. So we need to employ strategies that are not just basically stress management strategies, but are going to prevent us from having a chronic crash,
Right.
a, yeah, a kind of a complete depletion of all our resources. We need to find new resources now. We
Mm.
need to start building up a repertoire of coping, which was not probably there in our existing strategies earlier. Let's take the simple thing about structure,
Mm.
the daily life structure, which was so inbuilt into our routines. When we woke up and then we left our bedroom and went into the kitchen and we did our work, or we went onto the dining table, ate our food, and after that we then moved out, right? We got dressed and we left for work.
Right.
And I'm not talking about people who were working from home, but let's say majority of them who were working outside the home.
Correct.
Everything was inbuilt into their day without even realizing it.
Mm.
When an inbuilt structure starts to move away for
Mm.
some reason, Yeah, even if you experience a moment of a period of illness and you've had to work from home for some time, you
Mm.
will tell yourself, oh, thank God I'm back at work after
Right.
3 weeks or 4 weeks. Yeah.
Right.
But when that doesn't happen, then what do? You have to be able to build boundaries for yourself that are what we call as temporal boundaries. So
Mm.
you have to, like, how do you, for example, leave your work at the door when you are no longer leaving the door only?
Correct.
So
Correct.
you have to kind of bring those boundaries into your home,
Mm.
and which means dressing for work, which means shutting off at a time, which means also learning to use the spare time that you're getting, which used to go into travel or various other, mindless activities of the day, using that time also a little to take care of yourselves and rest and restore.
Right.
Earlier, the restoration would come automatically because you
Mm.
would go, say, you would commute by a public travel, or you'd commute with a group of friends, or you'd go into office, and even if you're working for 2 hours in one place, you'd probably move into a meeting, or
Right.
you would slap a buddy and say, "Chalo, let's go out and take a coffee
Correct.
break."
Correct.
All these things were inbuilt, and we didn't even realize it. Since it's not, we then have nothing to engage us, so we tend to just watch mindless stuff on the laptop, or
Right.
we just, a lot of people, I ask them, how do you go through your day? I sat and stared into space, and I don't know when the time went away, and
Mm.
an hour goes away and they have done nothing. They
Right.
have done work, nor have they done anything in the house. They've just stared into space. This is when you know that the brain is getting depleted. It's just kind of going into a shutdown and refusing to do anything.
Mm.
So the routine that was set in, we can't really have that same kind of, inbuilt routine. We have to start building it in. So I
Right.
would say designating a spot for working, which a lot of people have been talking about. If it's possible in your home, you need to be able to do that. You need to freshen up yourself every day.
Mm.
I am shocked that I've seen people in the lockdown saying this repeatedly to me. They don't take a bath every day.
Mm.
And it's this basic self-care which used to happen because we want to go out and look fresh.
Look
We used to
good.
do it.
Right.
Look good. Now many people are not doing that. Many people go onto Zoom calls or things without even having, properly freshening themselves up.
Mm.
These are all small things that are finally telling the brain, okay, like, there is no reason for living.
Right.
There's nothing to excite us. So why don't we just go into a shutdown?
Mm.
Yeah. There is there's a trauma expert called Dr. Bessel van der Kolk.
Mm.
He talks about how when we are under stress and then when we go through this burnout strain kind of a phenomenon, our brains reach out to others for help. We cry out to others for help. Okay, come engage with us. So that
Right.
social engagement helps us to move out of that traumatic stress. But
Right.
there's no social engagement here.
Mm.
We don't meet people, our brains are not getting that. So then, because we can't reach out, we go into disengagement.
Right.
We go into the other portion of our brain which disengages from the world, disengages from ourselves, and that's when we slowly start telling ourselves life is not worth living.
Mm.
Just, nothing is worth doing. Even if I'm going to be working so hard on this project, what is the point?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
who's going to appreciate me? What's the point of this? What's the point of that? These are all, the subtle signs that burnout is setting in. So you have to realign, get back on track, wake up tomorrow morning, make a promise to yourself, I will take a bath. I will make sure that if I have to work, I work only for about 45 minutes and often or an hour. Then I leave that place, go out, maybe look at scenery or look at nature, come back after 10 minutes, refreshed, again work a little bit.
Right.
These things have to be done consciously because the first half of our life, all of our routine was very subconscious.
Right.
So that's the first thing, redefining temporal boundaries. And I think redefining everything. For example, redefining short breaks.
Right.
It for us, short breaks meant going away on a Saturday, Sunday outside the city. Today, a short break may mean taking a break from the screen altogether,
Right.
which means on a Sunday, you do not see a single screen
Mm.
unless it is like you're opening up your phone to see or check for emergency calls or anything like that. You take a screen break. So that's another way of redefining what we call as the new normal.
Right.
You need to understand that without a screen, when you just engage with people or even with yourself, it can be incredibly soothing.
Mm.
You also need to redefine exercise. A lot of people are waiting for the gym to open up.
Right.
And
Right.
I don't, how much will we wait? So you need to start building in targets for yourself. Most of the mobile phones come with health apps that track your steps.
Right.
And I'm surprised at myself. I used to easily reach a 10,000 target, even though I have a sedentary lifestyle because I work with clients sitting.
Mm.
I would at least target 8,000 to 10,000 steps. I'm shocked today. I don't even target 2,000, 3,000 steps.
Right.
And that's crazy because
Correct.
that's a forget the calories and all that is different. But
Mm.
what are you doing to your body by just not having any activity whatsoever? So just walking around is important. Making sure you're walking in your house or taking the time to, even if you take rounds of your building compound, you can build in about 3 4,000 steps there itself, and
Mm.
that's what 20 minutes of a walk. So it's important that exercise be redefined,
Right.
and you start doing some form of different types of exercise at home daily.
Right.
Anything. It can be even a simple restorative practice for yourself. YouTube is filled with these, and we
Mm.
have apps that are freely available. So we can't wait now for our coaches to, take us back into the gym and tell us to work out. We have to redefine the way we're looking at it. I think it's also how you redefine the way you end a workday. People are
Correct.
not ending workdays.
Mm.
Like in Germany, there is something called as Feierabend. That means
Mm.
it's like a daily evening ritual where they just like shut their work and then they're like they have a, sip of beer and they're all good to go. So that's how
Right.
hearty Germans live. Yeah, they find a work day ending. We
Right.
don't. We're not doing any of that.
Right.
So how do you end your workday? End it. There has
Mm.
to be an end to it. You can't just say, oh, I'm eating dinner. Let me just send this work mail off.
Mm.
So this is what people are doing because you have to understand also that people are scared so much of losing their jobs
Correct.
that they
Correct.
constantly want to be on. And unfortunately, they don't realize if they burn out, they are anyway at a place where they are risking everything, including
Mm.
their job.
Mm.
So you need to be able to redefine your boundaries. That's those are some of the steps, baby steps to start.
So one of the questions we've got is somebody who's saying that, at the end of the day, I am completely exhausted. I'm tired. And, it's a long day. I've worked till 10, 11. But, so I'm so tired, I should be able to just fall into bed and fall asleep. But it doesn't happen. I stay awake.
Common thing, and I
Mm.
think you have also said that sleep is something which people have started searching on
Correct.
your website about because it's the number one concern for a lot of people. And
Mm.
it's strange because, as this person has rightly said, if your body is so exhausted, you should sleep. The
Mm.
unfortunate thing is the body is not able to make out changes in routine.
Right.
Okay, the rituals that used to be part of our life earlier, you come back home, yeah,
Mm.
you have a particular way of doing things. After you come back home, you have a certain ritual that gives your body an idea, oh, now it's time to fall asleep. These
Right.
rituals have started going away from our life, which is why our brain is constantly ticking,
Mm.
and it's constantly on alert because it can't make out the shifts between time zones, and it can't
Right.
make out the shifts which automatically would happen. It's like a constant jet lag, a
Mm.
consistent and regular jet lag that your brain is going through.
Right.
Um, like I said, even you have to redefine the way you're looking at getting yourself to sleep. So you need to have a ritual that used to be pre-built in. You will have to build in a new one.
Right.
You may have to, for example, decide, maybe when before the lockdown happened, you could check your phone before sleeping and you would probably fall asleep, knowing that the next day you'll get up and solve whatever problem. But when you wake up the next day during a pandemic and in a lockdown, every day comes with new challenges. You don't know how things will look and there is no certainty.
Mm.
So as a result of which, you may need a lot more self-care than you did before the pandemic.
Right.
So you may need 30 minutes of a proper sleep ritual before you go to sleep, which you can start right from today. That
Right.
sleep ritual may include having a glass of milk, it can be a shower, it can be completely off all technology, it can be engaging with somebody you really care about that is not living with you in your home. having
Mm.
a video call with them or a talk with them or even a WhatsApp chat. Something that gives your brain an idea, oh, this is the new routine, this is the
Right.
new ritual. Do it for a couple of weeks and you'll notice that you start probably falling asleep. This is the
Right.
simple part. There are more complex reasons also why people don't fall asleep. Is there a problem that you can't find a solution to?
Mm.
Because if your brain is under stress like that, then serotonin levels immediately fall. And when they drop, then the first thing that happens is you have difficulty falling asleep.
Right.
So I'd say find a solution to that problem if you can. And if there is no solution, then box that problem up. Box your emotions up and put them away. For
Mm.
example, if your job is under threat,
Mm.
you can't obviously wish that problem away. It's there. And maybe other people in the same position as you have been sacked. And you wonder whether your head is next on the chopping block. At
Correct.
that point of that's a real problem. And
Mm.
you will obviously lose sleep for some time before that. But when a person loses sleep, there is a message the brain is trying to give there also. Solve the problem. Maybe the
Right.
brain is saying, write down what your new talents are. What are the things you're missing out? Are there some things which you're not able, some avenues which you're not exploring?
Right.
In fact, I tell people if you can't go to sleep, the first thing is don't be disturbed about not sleeping.
Mm.
So one of the reasons people don't fall asleep is they're getting up, checking their clock, seeing they're not falling asleep, and then getting disturbed because they're not falling asleep.
Right.
So if you don't fall asleep, then you're more stressed out about not falling
Not
asleep.
falling asleep.
But if you don't fall asleep in the first half an hour, wake up, get
Mm.
up, try and see what is your brain trying to say, what problem is it trying to solve, write it down.
Mm.
And 99% out of the time, people find that they fall asleep if they have just listened to whatever their brain is trying to say.
Mm.
Yeah. Whenever, so there are, remember that insomnia has different steps.
Right.
If you have difficulty falling asleep, your brain is stressed out.
Mm.
That means it's trying to solve some problem so you can't fall asleep. But if you
Right.
fall asleep and wake up in the middle of the night,
Mm.
say you wake up at 3 a.m. or 4
Correct.
a.m., typically that means depression. That typically means that your brain is sad about something. It's
Mm.
unable to contain emotions too well. So figure out what those emotions are. So if it's early insomnia, typically try to solve the problem. If it's depression, take some professional help. That may help. So try and see what your sleep or lack of it is trying to tell you. We
Right.
always know the body is saying something. So what is
Correct.
it?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
We've got a question from somebody who's a banker from Mumbai. He says, there's also this constant conflict that is happening, right? Where it's about, will I get corona and
Hmm.
how much safety is too much, so how do we define risk tolerance, as I call it, right? So,
How much
and
safety is too much?
how much safety? I mean, I know, when we first did that first webinar was, stay at home, don't step out, don't be stupid, etc. But, we are very far from there, right? So we need to navigate those levels of risk now. So, and especially if you are in a family, as you said, where different people have different risk tolerances, how do we deal with that?
Absolutely. First is a lot of people saw the lockdown as a way to contain the virus spread, which I don't think is really the reason the lockdown happened.
Mm,
The lockdown was to make sure that the healthcare system developed newer coping capacities to manage the surge.
right,
We can't say that in a country like India, we have really balanced it or flattened the curve, so to speak, because we still have the healthcare facilities very, very overburdened.
correct.
So because of that, we still need to take care, and
Mm,
caution is really very important. But there is a difference between caution and there is a difference with obsession.
mm,
When it becomes obsession is when you really, really need to redefine what are you really doing.
right.
So people with anxiety typically go two ways. Either they
Mm,
avoid that the crisis is happening altogether, or then they overdo things.
right,
But caution is like a midpoint between them. So how much is too much? For example, you need to do the things everybody is doing, which
right.
is masking,
Mm,
distancing, sanitizing. These are the three mantras of life. Are you doing
right.
it? Now, even in that, are you, are you sanitizing every food packet that's coming into the house? There have been people who have told me they are washing green leafy vegetables with soap water.
Mm.
So I would say they have gone the other way.
Mm.
That's when their anxiety has taken them to complete levels of panic.
Right.
And there are people on the other end of the spectrum also who do nothing.
Mm.
They neither wear a mask when they go out, they do not carry a sanitizer with them. Forget about distancing. Yeah, they are meeting anyone and everyone.
Mm.
So you have to be able to take precautions that are mandated. But now with the unlock coming into place, there are a lot of things we can do, but we
Mm.
have to be mindful. We can't say "Ki we will only stay at home, but if you're leaving the house, be mindful. I
Right.
think the one thing we need to take with us when we leave our house is our alertness.
Right.
How are you from the time when you're pressing the elevator button to getting into your car to wherever you're going, make sure that you're constantly maintaining the masking, sanitizing, distancing mantra in these places.
Right.
And if you're doing that, then you can do all of the things that you have that can be possible for you and which are allowed by the government authorities.
Right. Right.
So whatever is mandated, if we follow that, I don't think there's going to be a problem. And if you are in doubt, come back home, wash your hands, sanitize.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's about what we need to really be concerned about. Otherwise, the possibilities of sanitizing are so many, and the
Mm.
ways to get the virus are a million.
Right.
How many of these possibilities will you really, really control?
Correct. Correct.
You can't. Hmm.
Um, so one of the questions that's come up is also, while we talk about headaches and backaches, people are also saying that because of additional screen times, they're finding that their eyes are
Hmm.
hurting as well, right?
Hmm.
Anything on that you would like to talk about?
Absolutely. I think you have to take care of your eyes a lot,
Mm.
much more than earlier. We used to recommend IT workers to do this, but now all of us are in the same place.
Right.
So couple of 2, 3 exercises that are very helpful
Mm.
is something called scanning, which means because we are staring at the screen and our eyes are not used to doing that, our eye muscles are used to looking at various objects around us. So take some time away from the screen and actually look around the room that you are in as
Mm.
if you're painting all the objects in your room with your eyes. Literally just let your eyes glide over various objects. So that's one, that's called scanning.
Right.
And another thing that you can do to make sure you reduce eye strain is something called near and far focus.
Mm.
You can keep your thumb around 6 inches away from your face and look at the thumb for a second and then look at an object very far away from you,
Right.
something that's literally at a distance. So when your eyes shift between two things like that, it releases the strain immediately.
Mm.
So this is called near and far focus. Another exercise that is, often propagated by yoga teachers is called the palming exercise, where you just create a
Mm.
heat between your palms and then cup the palms, the hands over your head. And when you're doing that, make sure that your eyes are not really touching the palms.
Mm.
You're allowing your eyes to just get that oxygenation that you get, yeah, and the warmth from the heat
Warmth
that
from
you
the
create on the
right.
palm. So these are 2, 3 simple exercises that can be done. It's very important to take care of the eyes.
Mm.
And I'm sure a lot of people are avoiding getting eye checkups,
Mm.
are avoiding, eye strain getting checked out simply because they're
Right.
scared of going to doctors.
Correct.
But
Correct.
when things start evening out, we'll see this is a huge issue people come up with.
Mm.
Headaches, strain. For headaches, I would say take breaks from the screen and please don't keep popping, headache medication. That's very simple to do. Stay away as much as you can from too much caffeine because sitting in one place
Right.
to keep yourself alert through calls, people keep consuming more and more caffeine, and that creates its own, all kinds of toxins in the body.
Right. Right.
So if you feel like you want to sip something, sip warm water. That's really nice. It'll help you sort of realign in yourself a little bit. And for headaches, I think one of the most amazing remedies is look at nature for a bit.
Mm.
For people who are cooped in offices also, I always suggest to them, keep a plant with you, something that doesn't take too much of effort to maintain.
Mm.
Like not a bonsai. You can keep like a money plant.
Money plant.
Hmm? It's known that the minute you see greenery for a bit, something happens. It has some kind of a shift happens in the way in which your brain feels relaxed, and you start kind of calming down immediately.
Right, right,
So if you don't have access to a window and you can't look outside when you are working, then please keep a plant around you.
right, right. Okay, thank you. One question that's come in is that I have a small child, and that's my small child spends a lot of time online because I have to work as well.
Hmm.
But everybody keeps telling me that I have, the uh, it's bad parenting, and I should be finding ways to keep the child entertained. Not with screen time but with other options, and it's really difficult because I can't send the kid to play with any with friends or neighbors, or any of those things are not possible. What would be your advice to that parent?
Not to the parent, I'd advise the people who are advising that parent. It's wrong advice. I read a study in the early part of the lockdown, and it was hilarious. It was like all of these people who are advising lowering screen time and all of the studies and researchers, they've gone into hiding
Mm,
because their
mm,
studies have all been upended.
right.
So that, and to speak for myself, I was never in favor of reducing screen time to a large extent, or of all of this banning of screen time and all of that, because it made no sense. These are kids who are born into the technology world. They
Mm,
have a different way of looking at the world than we do.
mm,
Yeah, it's like we always say, right? They are natives to the technology world, whereas
correct.
we are migrants to this
Right,
world.
right.
So I think it's the adults in today's day and age that are more hyper about screen time than really the children.
Mm,
So because today the whole definition of screen time has changed.
has changed.
It's not about gaming anymore. You're doing everything on the screen, including
Mm,
studying, calling up your old grandparents if they live in another city, engaging with friends, games. Everything is on the screen. I think the only thing a parent has to be careful about is reducing unproductive stuff which is going to be damaging to a child. For
right,
example, if you asked a parent how much ice cream is okay for a child, what will that parent say? Obviously, too much ice cream is not okay.
right.
Similarly, how much screen time is okay for the child? Productive screen time is okay.
Mm,
If the child is spending too much screen time and doing things that are unproductive and unhealthy, for example, gaming when they need to be studying instead,
right.
or they are entering internet chat rooms, which they're not
Mm,
supposed to be doing. They're doing unhealthy things like secrecy from you, and not telling you about some of their activities, which you don't know what's really happening there, especially in terms of, are they talking to another adult, are they talking to somebody else? So
right.
whatever you don't have complete access to, or
Mm,
if you feel a child is going to a gray area, you have to show them how to use that internet more responsibly.
right,
So rather than just giving a blanket ban to a child that don't use any screen time, or putting extra pressure on yourself to find other ways to engage the child, use the screen only to engage yourself with the child.
right,
Find
right.
out what the child likes to play, and
Mm,
maybe you can do some kind of a physical game. There are, dancing also, which you can do together as a mother or a father and child together
correct.
on the internet.
Right,
And I think there is absolutely no problem in using the screen wisely, and parents engaging themselves with the child on the screen, as long as the parent is involved and as long as the parent knows instinctively what that boundary is.
right,
If you
right.
read up resources, everybody is going to tell you, oh, screen time is bad, screen time is
Mm,
bad. I think responsible use is important, not
right.
restrictive use. So we need, even if you see in the pandemic, screen time is being redefined as well.
Correct, correct. Um, One other thing is that, so there is this, I guess, greater awareness of mental health obviously has come in. And, people are trying different things, right? So you will have people saying, I must increase, I must find ways to meditate, I can't meditate, and uh, they will look for solutions to do that, etc. They set goals for themselves, which then they can't meet, and then they wonder if something is wrong with them that they can't meditate,
Mm.
for instance.
Mm.
Would you want to kind of, what's your view on that, and what should people be doing? And also, is there a
Um,
difference between mindfulness and meditation?
that's exactly what I was going to say initially.
Right.
It's very different. The two are very different things. People confuse this because there is a school of thought which teaches mindfulness based meditation, but mindfulness and meditation are actually activating different portions of the brain.
Mm,
Mindfulness is about using the five senses to stay in the here and now. Yeah, the
right.
things that you see around you, the sounds that you hear, what you're smelling. Meditation is the opposite. It's about shutting the outside world and going into yourself and kind of realigning with your body and your
Mm,
mind.
mm,
So they actually work in different ways. Meditation is not for everyone,
mm,
particularly people who are have mental health issues, people who are on psychotropic drugs, people who have been taking, who have been diagnosed with mental illness in the past, maybe off psychiatric medication now, people
right.
who are extremely restless and in the middle of a crisis.
Mm,
All of these people are told go and meditate. And when they
right.
do that, the crisis worsens because their brain is trying a very strong balance between shutting down their emotions and trying to manage their daily life properly.
Right.
So when you suddenly open up too many emotions, which happens when you meditate, and your brain is not ready and doesn't have enough resources, you naturally go for a crash.
Right.
So you have to be careful about doing meditation if you are currently very disturbed. Meditation is not like a mantra that will make you less disturbed.
Mm,
It is meant to help you attain a higher sense of purpose. It is meant for you to attain a higher sense of calmness when your base is somewhat stable.
right.
If your base is not completely stable, then you can't really use meditation. It's not the most practical thing. Mindfulness, on the other hand, is pretty gentle. It can be used all of the time. Like you can use mindfulness even when you are very disturbed. It will
Mm,
just help you kind of bring yourself back. It will help you connect to yourself. Mindfulness is something which you can do on a daily basis through an app, through a timer. It's as simple as when you are chopping the vegetables in the kitchen, washing your hand, brushing your hair. You're doing mindfulness there also. Daily life routine activities, you're just doing them with a little more engagement. It's
right.
about engaging your five senses. And the science behind this is when you engage your five senses, then your thinking brain comes into action. And when your thinking brain comes into action, somewhere or the other, your emotional brain starts calming down. That's
Right.
the whole purpose behind mindfulness, activating those brain pathways that will help you solve problems better, that will help you get over things faster.
Mm,
So we have to be careful about, not just prescribing meditation anywhere and everywhere.
right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've covered a fair amount of ground. Is there anything else that you would like to, make sure that we cover before we start to? Yeah, one question I had was, how can we distinguish between, we will try various self-help routines, we will try making these small changes. It hopefully it works for most people, but if it doesn't work, when do you learn to figure out that, look, this is beyond trying to do this myself, I probably need professional help? So for instance, if my insomnia goes beyond x number of weeks, then I need to seek either a sleep disorder specialist or a mental health uh, uh, you know professional. So
So
give us
I
some guidelines on that.
so first is of course the sleep. If the sleep has been disturbed for a long period of time, I
Mm,
would say if it's gone beyond a month, it shouldn't even, how would you survive without good sleep for even a month? But
right.
if it has gone on beyond 2 or 3 weeks and you've tried everything, you've tried establishing a routine, you've tried changing your sleeping posture, you've applied the sleep hygiene methods that you may have read online, and
Mm,
nothing's working. You're exercising, you're doing everything right. Then there may be some problems that require professional intervention.
mm,
Remember, professional intervention is not always going to a psychiatrist and popping a benzodiazepine or a muscle
right.
relaxant or a sleep medication. It's also about sometimes speaking first with a therapist who can help you understand and get perspective.
Mm,
And if you can get that, then that may just help you tide over the crisis.
right.
That's of course if the problem is only related to sleep. There may be a myriad other issues. For example, the person may have unexplained muscle aches and pains.
Correct.
The person may have difficulty initiating activity, which are
Mm,
some signs of depression. They can't get out of bed, or if they get out of bed, they can't sustain themselves beyond an hour or two.
mm,
They are not able to take enjoyment in any of the things they enjoyed earlier. Then these are all signs that you need to reach for professional help. People
right.
keep waiting till it reaches a crisis,
Mm,
and by a crisis, I mean that the person is, received a slap on the wrist by their manager, or they have been given a warning off by somebody in the home, or they
mm,
have made an attempt to suicide.
mm,
These are all crises that people face, and then they take help. And then if you're starting at a crisis, then obviously, your healthcare professionals are going to start medicating you, are going to, the intervention will be also stronger.
right.
So whenever you face a mental health problem, always remember early intervention is far better
Mm,
than waiting it out, waiting. So anything that carries on for beyond 2 or 3 weeks, which is what the recommendations are anywhere internationally, globally, in the manuals of mental health,
right.
please don't hesitate to seek help.
Right. Okay. Um, Anything else that you would like to, kind of wind up with, or, any final takeaways or messages to our audience?
So I think my thoughts to everybody is that this is a crisis, and I read somewhere someone said, and I can't remember who it was. They said, "Don't waste a crisis."
Mm,
It has a lot to teach us, and I'm sure you've heard these words over and over again. But it's important that you recognize that things in a crisis help you towards understanding all of those problems we were escaping from.
right.
And honestly, I feel that in urban life, escape is the easiest thing to do. And when a crisis hits us like this, we really need to start recognizing and understanding what is nature trying to say, what is it in our life that we have not really been paying attention to. Let's pay attention to that. Something in your life would have been missing, whether it's your own self care, whether it's your connection with your family, whether it's your intellectual growth, whether it's creative outlet, whatever it is, there's something missing, which is the reason why you have restlessness. This is the time to fill that gap.
Right.
This is the time to perhaps spend a little, time moving away from mindless activity and using all of that extra time that you have, which used to again go in managing daily life. You can
Correct.
use it to do meaningful work, meaningful things that make you happy. It shouldn't be meaningful for other people. It
Right.
should be good.
Meaningful to you.
It
Right.
has to be something that makes you happy at the end of the day. So your starting point to yourself always should be that if I have this time to myself, what would make me happy? And the
Mm,
second question to yourself is, suppose I had nothing. I had no, I was given no money for anything that I had to do, but I had all this time. What was something I would still continue doing? And you'll
mm,
be surprised by that answer. It could be that you would be a chef. It could be that you'd be a painter.
right.
It could be that you'd be a writer. It could be that you'd manage a business. What is it that you
Mm,
do even if you were not paid to do it? This is the time when you can find that answer for yourself.
right.
So those are
Right.
the thoughts I would have.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Havovi. I think it's
Thank you,
been very
Aparna.
useful. We've had, few good questions that have come in. Uh, and I know that, everybody's going through kind of a surfeit of webinars while our,
Yeah,
capacity to absorb is reducing over time. But
I
there were a
know.
lot of good takeaways. And I think it is important for all of us to take those, simple steps of bringing back breaks into our life, into our days, of bringing back a, a routine or a structure, as you said, that makes us
Yes.
look forward to a day. Somebody that I was in another group that I was talking to decided that it's now a good time to start wearing earrings or dressing up properly, because then it makes her look forward to the day, a bit more. Um,
Yeah.
so I think, and I think it is important to bring back both movement, if not full exercise, but definitely movement. And as Havovi gave us great tips for eyes and for sleep, and for disengaging and engaging both. So I think, thank you so much, and I'm sure it's going to benefit a lot of people uh, out there. And yeah, great insights. The meditation versus mindfulness as well. So I'm sure it will really, really. I can see this. Us trying to look at how we can create those smaller snippets as well from this. So
Oh,
um,
that's
thank you
great.
for all the
Hmm.
audience that's watching as well. And if you still have any questions, you can still write into us. And Havovi's always been very uh, kind of forthcoming in terms of providing help. So I'm sure she will. And again, thank you for your time on a Saturday afternoon. I know you've got client meetings coming up in another 5 minutes. So um,
Yeah.
thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you, Aparna. It was really insightful. Your questions are always great, what the audience asks. But also, I think these chats are very good because they cover a wide range of topics.
Right, right.
And, it's helpful for anybody just to log in and listen to the entire bit. So they get
Correct.
everything in one place. So thank you once again for inviting me here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you again, once again, to the audience. And see you for